All right, folks, for American History 2, let's talk about Unit 1 real quick. I'm going to try to post a video or two, just a quick lecture on each of the chapters as I go along. They're optional, but, I try to give you my take on it. Here's my take. This is dealing with the Civil War. The Civil War is not just about slavery. Now, a lot of people are going to want to argue with me. That's great. Argue away. It's not just about slavery. Is that part of it? Yes. Is that an important part of it? Yes. Is it the only part of it? Oh, no, it's not the only part of it. There is an ongoing argument before we even break out in the war. It's been there from the very beginning. These slave states, which are pretty much Virginia on down the coast, have an agrarian culture, right? They're about growing, they're about planting, they're about crops. And the states that are north are more industrial. You get up into England, you get New England, you get up into New York, you get into those states, and they're more industrial rather than agrarian. They're more about production and producing. And so what will happen early on is that Congress is going to try to foster our businesses, foster our manufacturing, foster our manufacturing base. To do that, they're going to influence trade. They're going to influence trade by setting some parameters, okay? The idea being is they're going to tax imports and exports. They're going to tax imports from countries, from companies, from industries that they want to grow. After the War of 1812, we started growing industries. The best way to grow industries like textile is say, listen, we want to go ahead and grow our textile industry. It's kind of important that we do this, but it's expensive to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tax imports to make them more expensive. If imports are more expensive, then people will buy domestic goods because they're less expensive, which is a wonderful idea. Not. Because we are a capitalist culture, a capitalist society, and where we can make money, we will. So what's going to happen is when Congress passes laws to make imports more expensive, the South, which grows and doesn't manufacture, has to buy its goods. I mean, you have to clothe, you have to feed, you have to take care of your people. And so since they don't manufacture, they have to buy those. They normally buy them from Britain or France. Now that they're more expensive to buy, they're going to have to buy them domestically. But the folks up north are going to say, you know what? We have a captive audience now since the imported goods are now this expensive and our goods are this expensive. Why don't we just go ahead and move up the price of our goods? It will still be less than the imports, but we'll make more money. This causes the South to have to spend more money. So they're going to be unhappy. They're going to be unhappy because they feel like Congress is treating them unfairly. This is the growth of sectionalism. If you are from the South, if you live in the South, have ever been up north, you might have noticed folks are different. If you are from north and you are coming here to the South, you go, oh my gosh, folks are different. It's a different culture, it's a different group. And so there's more than just slavery, but slavery becomes the crux, that becomes that arguing point, that becomes the focus of what it is. There is more to it. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about states' rights. Does the federal government have the right to tell states what to do? Well, according to the Constitution, in some parts, yes, in some parts, no. There are certain things that are reserved to the states to do, and yet the federal government seems to be impinging upon that. Best example I can give you right now is the argument we're having between governors and the president about who gets the right to tell the states they're open, who gets the right to open churches, who gets the right to tell you what you should wear in the way of protective equipment. This comes to a head in the form of the Civil War. This comes to a head in the argument about slavery. This comes to a head in the argument about states' rights. When Lincoln gets elected, the first thing the South does is get together and secede. They withdraw from the Union. This is the kickoff. It doesn't get to the war until the South says, you know what, we're going to go ahead and anything that was a federal fort, a federal property, is now a Confederate property since it's within our boundaries. And Lincoln's going to say, oh, no, you didn't. And he is going to send or attempt to send people to reinforce one of those forts, and then all hell will break loose. Once the shooting starts, people are more ready than anything to go ahead and fight it out. The South says, hey, you know, we can make this quick and fast. We are in the right, so we're going to win. We have the boys to go out there and fight. And what we can do is we'll just have to hold our own. The North thinks, oh, by all means, we'll go ahead and we've got the guns and we're in the right, and we'll go ahead and we'll beat those Southern boys up. Nobody thinks it's going to be a war. They think it's going to be a quick and dirty battle once or twice to be decided and be over. It doesn't go the way anybody thinks it will. We get into this long, drawn-out civil war. If you don't know much about the Civil War, well, that's what we call it now. If you lived in the South at the time, it wouldn't have been the Civil War. It would have been the War of Northern Aggression. If you lived in the North, it was the War of Southern Rebellion. They both had sides. As long as the South was fighting a defensive war, as long as they stayed below that Virginia-Maryland line, as long as they were defending, they did really well, okay? The facts are simple. The Southern boys know how to shoot. The Southern commanders who graduated from West Point, who graduated from the Virginia Military Institute, they have experience in the Mexican-American War. They have experience fighting alongside the Northern commanders. And the fact is that the Southern commanders are better. They're better tacticians. All right, they're better at defending. And so the South is going to be winning battle after battle after battle. The North doesn't have as good a commanders. The North has a problem. They have President Lincoln. President Lincoln is trying to manage the war. When generals will not do what he wants, he replaces them. When they still won't do what he wants, then he orders them to do things. It's going to result in them in the North losing some battles along the way. It's going to be bad. Well, we're going to try a variety of strategies in this war to win. And what's going to happen is this, there's two things. The South is going to hold out and declare what they call the King Cotton Strategy. They think if they hold on to cotton, don't ship it to Europe, Europe will eventually engage and demand that the Union recognize the Confederacy of the South so that they can continue trading with Europe, because Europe needs the cotton to feed the Industrial Revolution. They need it for the textile mills. The North thinks, gosh, what we can do is we can do what's called the Anaconda Strategy. And the Anaconda Strategy will be that we're going to go ahead and cut off the South. We're going to go ahead and squeeze it from the Mississippi River on over, restrict its ability to ship, restrict its ability to trade, and choke it off. It's not going well, and what will happen is Lincoln is going to be a bit desperate. Lincoln, in his Emancipation Proclamation, it's a military move, folks. It's not a political move so much as a military move. He says, you know what we're going to do is we're going to bring this home. We're going to make this about right. We're going to make this about slavery. If he makes it a discussion about slavery, a war about slavery, Europe is not going to intercede, because by this time, Great Britain and most of Europe are out of the slave trade. They have outlawed slavery, and they want nothing to do with a country that's going to say it's okay to do this. He's going to change the discussion. It doesn't free a whole lot of slaves, but it does invite African Americans and Africans and freed slaves into the war. It involves them in fighting. It also brings them in a different way in the form of rebellion in the South. The discussion becomes about slavery. The war becomes about slavery. And what will happen is this Emancipation Proclamation is going to be delivered after what's really the first Union victory. Victory is kind of a loose description. Let's just say at the end of the day, the Union is holding the battleground. And since they're still holding the battleground, they get the win. He issues this after the Antietam battle, and it's a win in the fact that it changes the dynamic. It changes the discussion. And so what's going to happen is we're going to continue on the battle from there. If it's news to you about who won, the Union wins. But part of the Union winning is going to be the introduction of Reconstruction. So what I'm going to talk about in the next video is Reconstruction.